In this little interview style video, I go over why I chose to start the Airbnb business, 3 tips every beginner should know, how to pitch a landlord if it's your first time pitching them, and just sort of what to expect pitching a landlord, and lastly, how to deal with bad reviews. Alright guys, so just a little bit about the guy interviewing me. His name is Serge Lepescu, and he recently moved out to Phoenix, Arizona to start his own business, his own assisted living business out there. So guys, go check him out. I'll link his channel down below. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this. Go get your popcorn, go get your drinks. Stay tuned. It's kind of lengthy, but it's definitely informative, so you guys will definitely enjoy it. Yeah, but today I'm just going to be answering some pretty tactical questions Serge has for me regarding rental arbitrage with Airbnb and other home sharing websites.
So the first question that I have for Robert is, why Airbnb and how did you get into it?
Alright, well the reason I decided to move in with Airbnb is because, first of all, I love what they do. I love their platform. My first Airbnb experience was in Los Angeles. Actually, me and Serge, we stayed there together along with my fiance now and my younger brother. That was my first Airbnb experience and we loved it. It was absolutely incredible. And from then on out, I kind of was brought to light about their platform and what they do. And it never occurred to me to host on their platform until Serge actually sent me a podcast. He sent that podcast to me, and that's kind of what me and Serge are to each other, bouncing business ideas off each other back and forth. And I was really into that podcast. I really thought I could do that myself. So I mirrored what this guy was doing. He was having some dude on, I don't even remember his name, but I said, if this guy can do it, then so can I. And so that's kind of why I chose to go ahead and start this business for myself. I mean, that's pretty much it. And from then on out, I've been having massive success with it. And another thing that I really enjoy about Airbnb is that it's not a saturated market. There's not very many influential people in the space. There's not very many authority figures online talking about this. And there's a few select guys that, I look up to and I respect that are doing this, but that's about it. And I think there's a lot of room to grow for me.
For sure. Quick side note though, when I sent him that podcast, I was on a Stairmaster, sweating my freaking butt off, and I just was listening to this podcast and I was like, dang, he could definitely, I was really intrigued by the business model, and I was like, dang, I can't do it right now, but you know what, I'm gonna just share it with Robert because I know he would act on it as soon as he heard it. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. So with that being said, you ultimately chose it because you saw the opportunity. It didn't require a lot of capital up front. Not at all.
Compared to other businesses.
Yeah, so that was really intriguing to both of us. He just had more time than I did at the time. And then the third thing is you just love the whole model of it.
I love Airbnb.
Everything that Airbnb does is that
killer.
whole, so guys, it's definitely an opportunity that you guys should jump on. And definitely just go check it out on his channel. He talks about everything in detail. So the second question that I have is, for beginners, what are the 3 biggest tips that you would give them as just starting out, and what you would do differently if you could go back and change anything?
Well, for beginners, there's obviously 2 ways that you can go about this. You can start by purchasing a property, which takes a lot of capital up front, or you can start by doing a method. The method that I use, and it's called rental arbitrage, and you rent the property with written consent, because in the terms of service for Airbnb, you are not allowed to host if it's not your property or if you don't have written consent. So therefore, you make sure you have written consent from the landlord, or else you're risking the chance of being evicted or kicked out, and nobody wants to go through that kind of stuff. So make sure that you do everything right from the start. And with that being said, the 3 main tips I would give you is find a landlord that is willing to work with you. This is your biggest obstacle. This is the biggest obstacle you're facing just in the business model in general, especially if you're not buying properties up front, because you're going to go through many landlords before you finally find one that is willing to hear you out. And this is from my own experience. I went through multiple different meetings, many rejections, and many hits to my ego before I finally was able to just get the right landlord that was willing to work with me. The second piece of advice is take quality photos of your listing. These photos will rank your property higher with the SEO. These photos will go, they'll make the difference of you getting booked or not booked. That's a very important thing you can't overlook. Don't just snap some iPhone shots of the property and list it up. You need professional grade photography, and it'll pay for itself tenfold. The third thing that I advise is be sure to go for superhost status as quickly as possible. This is Superhost status means you just have 4.8 cumulative a review average. That means because everything on Airbnb is on a review basis, just make sure that you have a 4.8 average right out of the door, right off the bat. And you can achieve this by making sure you have everything in place for the perfect property.
How many reviews does that usually take?
I would say it could take you anywhere from 8 to 10 reviews, depending on how you're doing as a beginner. You can probably achieve that in less. Let's say if you get just 5-star review, 5-star review, 5-star review. But as a beginner, I feel like a lot of people, it's trial and error for them, so they're figuring things out as they go, and that feedback really helps.
Okay, awesome. So with that being said, you mentioned the whole landlord aspect of it. That was one of the tips, the first tip actually. So leading to the next question is, if you do rental arbitrage and that's the route that you take, you did mention a second route. What was the second route?
Well, the second route is just actually owning real estate. Just having, let's say you have rentals, you have a duplex, you have a house you're using on the market for long-term tenants. You can use that property and quadruple your net income.
Okay, so with that being said, for most younger people who don't have long-term credit, to go purchase a house, or they just don't have the capital as a down payment, whatever the case may be, rental arbitrage sounds like the way to go for most people, especially if you're younger and you're just wanting to, get your feet wet in real estate. That's the way to go. So with that being said, how do you pitch a landlord? What is the best way to make it beneficial not only for you, but for them as well?
So that's the thing for it. To pitch the landlord, you have to come off presentable. You don't want to do it over the phone. You don't want to do it through text. You want to make sure you're there in person, and that eliminates any chance of you getting scammed. I know Serge mentioned in his video that he had kind of a sketchy encounter with that whole ordeal. So you want to make sure you're face to face with that landlord, and you look your A game. You want to be presentable, because your first impression is also your last impression. That's a very important thing you can't overlook. So you want to meet face to face with that person, and you want to let them know that you're a quality potential long-term tenant for him. So most of these landlords, they deal with a lot of troubled tenants. They deal with a lot of tenant issues. You guys can find these stories online everywhere. And what you want to do, you want to make sure that that landlord gets something of value from you. And one of these things that he could potentially see as value is a presentable, young, motivated guy, ready to go get it, ready to go make the world his oyster. I don't know if that's even a saying. Whatever, you get the concept. And you want to make sure that he understands you'll keep his property in tip-top shape, in for sale condition, and that is something that he can respect and he can value in the long term. That is one of many things you can do for providing value. Another thing you can do is actually offer to give him a percentage of your gross revenue. Now, don't go too over the top with this, because that can end up being a pretty large amount of money depending on how much you're grossing a month. So you want to be careful. Just offer him something like 5% or something, to where he's getting a little bit more than rent, and that would probably balance things out in that way. But you just want to make sure you come off as presentable as possible and have some kind of pitch in mind. This will definitely build your sales skills and your sales pitch abilities. And I'm definitely going to speak out of my own experience. It helped me and it shaped me. My experience from my first landlord meeting, that was kind of a wreck. It didn't go the way I intended it to, and it really hurt. But then I learned from that and I moved forward with that. And so don't get discouraged. It could take you 7 landlords, it could take you 10 landlords before you finally find one that's willing to allow you to use his house.
For sure. So I got a question. If a landlord's like, because I'm sure a lot of people ask this question. It's like, well, why won't the landlord do Airbnb themselves if it's so profitable, right? It's something that a lot of people have asked, I'm sure. So what's your answer to those types of people?
Well, the thing is, most landlords don't even know this business model exists. And that's from my experience here in the Midwest. Most of the landlords that I've dealt with and I've spoke with, nobody knew what it was. The one landlord that knew what Airbnb was, because he'd used the platform, allowed me to use his property. So that's the difference here. It's just the fact that there's something that they don't know what it is, and they're too old. Most of these people are, middle-aged. They're probably 50, 60. They don't know much about internet and online things, and therefore they don't know much about Airbnb, because it's definitely a new up-and-coming business model that is just now entering the markets. And a lot of people are still learning about it. And that's one of the things that, maybe in the future, these landlords will be utilizing Airbnb, with their own properties. But for the time being, there's just a massive gap in the people who know what the business model does and how you can take advantage of it, and people just who are clueless to what it is. And the second thing is, maybe these landlords are too busy to be managing the Airbnb business. That's a huge thing. A lot of the business, aspect of things, it takes a lot of time up front and a lot of effort to get things going before you can get it automated. And therefore, a lot of these guys, they probably own 10 properties. They're probably busy with like managing the properties and doing other things. So a lot of these guys don't really want to get involved in something that'll take so much of your time. That's my answer for you.
So guys, most landlords, they are just either busy with their lives, they got families, they got probably just other jobs, other things. They bought real estate just as an investment. So they don't really have the time to sit there and watch their long-term tenant, and if you're going to be the type of long-term tenant that's going to need to sell the property every single night or whatever the case may be with Airbnb, they're going to know that you're going to take care of it. They're going to know that you're going to definitely manage the home and keep it in top-notch condition compared to just any long-term tenant who just doesn't care because it's not their home. So with that being said, guys, most landlords, if you pitch them like that, make sure that you are presentable, that you are being serious about what you're wanting to do, and don't pitch them right away with the whole percentage aspect, right?
Yeah,
you'd leave that like last resort.
Yeah.
If they're still kind of hesitant, I would say, hey, listen, I know this is kind of something that probably you've never dealt with, but listen, if we can make this deal happen, I will pitch in an extra 5% of the gross income. So, that can ultimately close the deal.
Touch upon what you just mentioned about long-term tenants who don't respect the property. When I moved into this property, I think the tenants that were staying there before didn't clean it once since they were there for over a year. And you can imagine never sweeping, never vacuuming. This floor was filthy, and it took 2 days to deep clean this property. If you guys can kind of gauge how dirty this place was, it smelled like, it was absolutely like, I don't even know how to describe it. I wish there was before and after pictures, but quite frankly, this landlord now loves me because this property looks brand new. Like if anyone were to walk in there, like Serge said, I'm selling that place every night to somebody new, to somebody that's looking for a clean place to stay, and therefore that place it looks spotless, it looks brand new.
Yeah.
And this is day in and day out, and that's sort of one of the things that a long-term landlord could appreciate if he's using his property for like a long-term tenant, and that's definitely a selling point for a lot of people.
Yeah, so guys, just keep that in mind, and if you do get rejected, there's so many houses for rent, and with the way the market's shifting right now, homes are going to start being rented out left and right. So, make sure you guys jump on that. You'll be able to pitch a lot more landlords. And with that being said, with your landlord, building that relationship, in case he does get another property, or say you come across a landlord who has multiple properties and he sees that you're doing a good job with one, he'll probably end up giving you another property and so on and so forth, or refer you to another friend, or whatever the case may be, right? So that's why it's so important that you guys do a good job, even once you do close the deal. Make sure that you guys maintain the home and actually keep to your word, and make sure you keep to the agreement that you come to with the landlord. So the last question that I have for him, and this is a very big deal because you are catering to people, right? So you are going to have reviews. And one of the main things is bad reviews. They happen, right? And he does actually talk about how to deal with bad reviews, and even a bad review that he had himself on the channel. So the question is, how do you deal with bad reviews? Okay, so right off the bat, a bad review could be constructed of a lie. This could be something that somebody was just trying to get at you, and they can make something up that's not true. And you can actually report this with Airbnb, and they will look it over, review it, and if it's kind of a lengthy process, but they can end up removing that review if they deem that it was untruthful, or like if it was in any way, like it had foul language or anything like that. It's in the terms of service. So that's one way you can actually deal with a bad review. But if it's actually just a review that they're being honest about it, and it's something that you messed up with and you have to fix, and you just kind of have to take that as constructive criticism, take it with a grain of salt, and go in there and fix that right away, because you don't want anyone else seeing that same issue. And I've learned from this, on my own, in my own experience. And one other thing is, if you do get one of these bad reviews, you can go ahead and review a guest that stayed at your place recently, and their review will pop up before that bad review. So I hope you guys can kind of understand how this works. So let's say it's kind of, you have to visualize it in your mind, but the person you review most recently is the review that's going to pop up first. And most people just look at the first 3 reviews. And so if you can get that review knocked down like to 4th, 5th, you may have a better chance of hiding it. But ultimately, guys, just go for the 5-star review every single time. You don't
want to deal with bad reviews, and of
Yeah.
course, you know, you're catering to people's expectations, and everyone's picky. We've had people that have absolutely loved our place, nothing to complain about, and there's people who have been nitpicky about little things, which, I mean, even we overlook those little things. So you'll just learn that as you go. But that's there's kind of two different ways you can go about that. Obviously, Airbnb can take the review down if it's, you know, anything that's damaging your business,
Okay.
and or you can just, you know, knock it down a few rankings with reviewing, you know, guests that have stayed after that bad review. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this information, and you guys can implement this in your own lives. You guys can apply this to your business if you guys are looking to start this. Thank you guys so much for staying tuned. Go check out Serge's channel. Me and him go way back. When I told you guys that I started this business because of a podcast, he's actually the one that sent that podcast to me. So he kind of deserves some credit here. Thank you guys for 500 subscribers. I am so thrilled that you guys all chose to be here. And guys, really quick, check it out. My bike is right there. It's back. Soon enough, I'll have that bike right back in my videos where it used to be, except for it's going to be black. I'm thinking about going like a carbon fiber black look to it. That's going to be, you know, that's kind of what I decided I'm going to do with the bike. If you guys stayed till the very end, you guys gave me a lot of watch time, so thank you so much for that. I'm calling you guys out specifically. And with that being said, I'll see you guys all in the next one.